and I just gotta say, hey, I didn't understand.
It's already started. She's so deep into Animal Crossing that she can't stop for
It's
her own
fine.
show.
This thing I've created either looks really cute or it looks like Easter, and I like can't tell.
We're professionals, FYI, just in case.
I don't think I've ever claimed that.
That's You're supposed to be the professional out of the two of us. We can't both be dysfunctional.
A lot of pressure to put on me specifically.
You're
What
not
are you bringing to the table here?
the
So why am I so out of frame?
I don't know. This would be so easy once we can start doing this in person.
No, I made it worse. I made it worse.
Once we can do this in person, this will be so much easier. But who knows when that's going to be?
When you move here.
I know, but moving's expensive.
I mean, yeah, it's sad.
Do you want to pay for my moving costs?
Not really, but you also have a house and I don't. So I think if you sold that house, you make some money.
You would think that.
And then buy second house. That's how houses work, right?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I don't know much about them, but also, oh my goodness, I spelled unfulfilled so wrong on our outline.
Oh, I know.
Several times.
You also spelled disgust wrong.
No, you can't prove that.
I just saw it. I wish was editing. I was recording those changes.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So welcome to the party, everyone.
Welcome to episode 5.
Yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about an issue that has been plaguing the video game world for the last many years. It's been around for a while, but in the last few years it's increased a lot, where devs are putting out games that are not finished, buggy, and or releasing content later, doing long-term updates, or putting content that should be released in the base game and selling it as DLC.
This has been an issue actually since like the PS3, Xbox 360 era.
Yeah.
It wasn't an issue on the Wii though, because Nintendo is not as bad about it. But
Well,
I mean, there's some examples, but one of those examples is not Nintendo themselves, and I'll talk about that later. But the other one is very much Nintendo. The other one is very much Nintendo.
yeah, one of our examples is very Nintendo.
It's the game.
Exclusively Nintendo.
It's the game Emily couldn't put down for 5 minutes.
Oh, that's not the game I was referring to. I guess 2 of our games are exclusively Nintendo.
Yeah.
One is way more of a problem though.
The one that's what I'm saying. The one that's way more of a problem is actually not Nintendo. It is by Nintendo. Like Nintendo publishes it, but they're not the developers.
Your name on it.
That's
your problem.
True. That's true. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and just start by discussing what makes an unfinished game. What, give some examples, etc. Em, I'll let you kick it off.
Basically, any game that is buggy as hell, to the point of sometimes being unplayable. Like, there's some bugs you can get past, and you can be like, oh, that was an aesthetic thing, or I'm clipping through a wall a little bit. But then there's games, like obviously, the elephant in the room here is Cyberpunk on this conversation.
There are some bugs that are downright charming, I won't even lie. Like, if you just see an NPC freaking out for no reason, that's just funny. Like, if it doesn't break the game, then it's just funny. It's charming.
Some bugs can be very charming. They can be really hysterical. They can add some value, but those are like normal bugs. There's a difference between I think any game that's released is going to have some quirks, some bugs, some smoothing out to do. This state of releasing games that we're talking about, specifically Cyberpunk at this moment, it's just downright unplayable. And it's insane. Like, they had to issue refunds. People who had older consoles couldn't even play them, despite the fact that it was promised to be on the PS4 and Xbox One X, whatever came before the current Xbox.
The Xbox One.
What do we have now?
The Series X.
It's
Oh,
kind of cringy that you know that.
actually, you want me to make it worse? You want me to make it worse? It was the Xbox One. Then they released a new variant called the Xbox One S. Then they released another variant called the Xbox One X. And now we're on the Xbox Series X and Series S are the current consoles.
We're on some real Apple shit here. That I don't care for. It's confusing, and I'm not here for it. Thank you, PlayStation, for just naming them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then adding a Pro on it.
Thank you, PlayStation, for also having exclusive games and making it worth it. Though I'm still bummed about them buying Xbox buying Bethesda, and that's gonna suck.
Bummer. But like I've been seeing, I think it's gotten a little excessive, and we're getting a little off topic here. But I've seen people saying like Xbox is winning the console race now because they got Starfield, and it's like, whoa, guys, slow down. You had one game, and I can still play it on PC if I want.
Yep, and PlayStation's got Spider-Man. It's got Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank.
The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima for a while, Until Dawn.
Oh,
they're killing it.
I thought we were talking about the newest PlayStation specifically, the PlayStation 5 specifically.
Oh no, I was just talking about PlayStation exclusives in general. But anyway, back to the conversation about devs releasing games that are physically unplayable. Right, there's a difference between a charming bug and something that's just unplayable like Cyberpunk was. And there's definitely some in between. Or sometimes devs get a little too ambitious and promise more than they can deliver. Or they deliver something and it fails to work. I mean, I'm thinking of Fallout 76 here, where they were like, you can nuke other places, and then people nuked so much it crashed the entire game. How did you not prepare for that? How did you hand nuclear weapons in an online game and not expect people to use them?
I will say this about some of the games on this list. Fallout 76 is not included in this group because they're their own bosses and it doesn't matter. But games like Cyberpunk specifically, it wasn't fully the devs' fault because it was due to time constraints, due to, big wigs who don't know anything about game development and just wanted to make some money, right?
Yeah, but like that's a little bit of a problem too, because Cyberpunk was in development for so long that you have to ask the question, what were they doing for that period of time? Were they constantly changing and re-updating it? Like, did it genuinely take that long to build the game? Why didn't they get more time? Like I feel like a lot of times it comes down to companies, yes, pushing tighter time constraints than they should be pushing, and like the crunch, obviously that's very famous with like Naughty Dog recently. But sometimes, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the times it does come down to that, with being like, this game needs to get out and it needs to get out right now. Or like showcasing games earlier than they should be showcased. And then 3. Kingdom Hearts 3. There's another game I was thinking of and I don't remember, but like showcasing games way earlier and then people are sitting around waiting for them. Don't showcase your game until it's basically ready.
Elder Scrolls 6 is another one people are now like, where the hell is it? Besides the point, the big issue, and with Cyberpunk specifically, I know why Bethesda games take a long time. It's because they cram a lot in there. Like, it's not just like a 40-hour thing you can finish in 40 hours. There's a ton in there. But I think Cyberpunk was trying to do the same thing, but with more of a time constraint. And didn't
it take like 12 plus years?
I thought it was like 8.
Well, now we have to Google.
You have to Google. But yeah, no.
9 years.
9 years. Okay, I was closest without going over.
You were closest. Thank you. You're so smart, Blake.
So Cyberpunk, when it came out, the biggest nonsense, other than the consoles, like the PS4 and the Xbox One, it not working on there was like obviously probably the biggest scandal of them all. But even on Steam, it couldn't load NPCs. Like if you were to look at a street, there'd be people on it, and then you look up and look down, there'd be nobody on it anymore. People would just disappear. The game would crash incessantly. It was a nightmare. It works now. After how long has it been out? 3 years?
It's been a while, and that's after they had to issue refunds for people. That's after the game, like literally, I remember going to the store like 2 weeks after this game came out and seeing it for like $10.
I bought
And I
it
was
for
like,
$10.
exactly. Like nobody was ever going to buy that game at full. Like they nuked the value of their own game to the point that yeah, even if they did fix it, like I would never in my life pay $60 for Cyberpunk. And I feel bad for people who did.
And once again, so that goes all to time constraints. The next one on our list does not even touch time constraints. This is the purest form of corporate greed in the entire world. And as much as I love this franchise, the last few iterations, it's been bad. Sorry, everyone in chat for this one and everyone on the YouTubes. Pokemon Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. We'll start with Sword and Shield because Sword and Shield was not as bad. Sword and Shield is the first game they brought to a home console, but it had the worst graphics of all time, right? The game functioned, it slowed down at parts, but it wasn't like unplayable. Mm-hmm. Scarlet and Violet had awful graphics, had terrible frame rates. Like it would like not fully crash, but it would just go down to like 10 frames per second out of nowhere. And then my all-time favorite, the glitches where you just randomly fall through the floor and have no reason why, or your character would just grow to like be like 3 times its size, or shrink to be super tiny, or your Pokemon just wouldn't even show up. Like it was really bad. And the reason I'm pointing this towards corporate greed and being the biggest issue is Game Freak themselves, is that they have no excuse. Pokemon makes more money than Disney. Pokemon is the largest franchise of all time and still holds that. They have the money. They have the resources. They're just cheaping out.
Like it's not to the point, I can't speak to a lot of Pokemon stuff specifically, but it's at the point where it's not like Zelda or Animal Crossing where it's taking 7-8 years between games, and at that point you're like, come on, it's been ages, where's the new game we really want to play? I feel like every year there is a new Pokemon game of some kind, and it's a little insane, and obviously I'm a little jealous because my franchises don't get new games that often, but you don't, if you're pumping out games that quickly and they're not coming out finished, there's no harm in slowing down. You're making money still, and it's not like, it's been a decade since your last game.
Plus, Pokemon gets money from other places. It's not like they're hurting for cash. They get money from cards. They get money for plushes. They have the cash flow. I think there recently was an interview with the head of the Pokemon company. He's saying, like, we're going to start slowing down. Because they were, like, aiming for a release a year. I think, so it was 2020, 2019, we got Sword and Shield. 2020, did we get anything in 2020? I don't remember. 2021, we got Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. 2022, we've got both Scarlet and Violet, and we got Legends Arceus. Like, it was just so much.
There was a lot.
It was way too much. And they really weren't trying or helping. Plus, they're doing these side apps, which I'm sure isn't helping. They did Pokemon Sleep. They did Pokemon Home. They did Pokemon Unite, which also takes resources. I'm sure they don't have different teams because they're cheaping out. But
I Googled Pokemon games that came out in 2020. I got Pokemon Mystery Dungeon,
that
Pokemon
was a remake.
Smile,
Yep.
Pokemon Home, Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Isle of Armor.
Those are DLC.
The Crown of Yeah, okay. So they were still releasing new Pokemon content regularly in some way, shape, or form, regardless of whether it was a completely brand new entry into the game.
Yeah, it's pure form of I don't care. They're gonna give us money anyways. And I'm not for the first. Yeah, no, this would be for the first time. I'm going to be hesitant whenever they release new games. I'm like, I'm not touching this until I get reviews. I can't. I just can't anymore. I've been disappointed for the past 3 generations, and I can't be disappointed anymore. Yeah.
What becomes the problem with a lot of these games is just like you said, they know people are going to buy them regardless, right? Like, Pokemon has no doubt in their mind that they could release a half-made game and people are still going to buy it and make a ton of money. So why spend longer on development? I mean, yeah, do you risk the idea of their brand being tarnished, their reputation going down a bit? Sure. But for a franchise that's as long-standing as Pokemon, like, a couple video games released a few years in a row, it's not going to have that much of an impact. So until people stop buying them and stop accepting what they're being given from these corporations, it's not going to change because they're getting away with it.
Scarlet and Violet sold 10 million units in the first weekend. I need that just needs to sink in.
It's a lot for a game that is, I mean, again, I haven't played it. I watched some of my friend play some of it, but like I saw a lot enough to know that that game was not done.
It's still broken.
Like it gets to the point where it's like they knew, right? Like I think that's what makes it worse for me. It's not like they released it and it was like people hated it just because they hated it. There were all these issues that any developer who spent any time in that game would have known were issues, and they said, "Eh."
They didn't care. Now, this has been the biggest amount of backlash I think they've ever gotten, which is why they're feeling the need to respond. So hopefully they listen. Hopefully they just hire a dedicated video game team, because Game Freak, back when they started with the first two games, they weren't game developers. They knew they didn't know that. I think they did magazines first. And their first two games were held together by Spit and a Wish. But they were still fun. Like, they were still functional. And then they figured it out. They figured out the Game Boy and the DS and all that. But something happened in the 3DS and Switch eras that just stopped caring. They just were like, well, we got our money from cards. We got our money from plushes. We're already big. It doesn't matter anymore. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a pretty big one. I think our first two were definitely big examples of games just not being ready, and then corporate greed. Whereas our third one, our next one on our list, obviously I'm a little biased on because I really enjoyed it, and I didn't play it during the initial release where this was a problem. And quite honestly, it's something I'm really bitter about at the moment after the release of Starfield, so this is probably going to be a bit of a tangent for me. Anyone who spent any time in video games probably knows that in 2017, I think it was 2017, maybe 2016, when Mass Effect Andromeda was released, obviously some of the graphics were a little wonky. There were some bugs, but I think if I remember correctly, they released a patch pretty quickly. I would say within like a week of launch, I believe, that fixed the majority of the issues. So by the time I played it, I didn't have those problems. And obviously that's still an issue. They shouldn't have released it as it was if they knew those were issues. But it is frustrating to see in between, different developers and different fan bases, the way those things are kind of justified. I don't want to say justified, but like the excuses given. Cyberpunk, I don't think there were any excuses coming from anyone.
No.
I've seen a couple for Pokemon.
The Pokemon excuses are all bullshit by people who, will ride or die for it no matter what. They can do no wrong.
And Mass Effect Andromeda was roasted to the ground. I still know people to this day, and we had people in our chat talking about this 2 weeks ago, the last podcast, but I mentioned it was one of my favorite games, who were still saying Andromeda was such a bad game because it was a buggy mess. Which, yeah, okay, you bought it, you had a bad experience. That's valid. But then looking at Starfield, I'm not here to say anything bad about the game itself. I don't know anything about the game. I haven't played it. I have seen enough wonky NPCs to know that they got the same treatment that Mass Effect Andromeda did. But the justification I've seen for that is it's the Bethesda charm. And that's just kind of bullshit to me, where we kind of put one developer on such a low level that they can release things like that and roast one for it and not the other.
Okay, so once again, my argument for Bethesda versus Mass Effect, the Andromeda, is that scale-wise, NPC-wise, how much is in both of them are once again two completely different ballparks. Mass Effect Andromeda is and most other games, anything compared to a Bethesda game is a much smaller scale. Now, it doesn't give Bethesda any excuse, and we'll talk about that more when we get to Fallout 76. Believe you me. But Andromeda being such a small scale, and them being these bugs being the initial bugs were game-breaking bugs. I know the graphics. I think people complaining about initial graphics it's a little weird unless it's Pokemon who makes all that money. But when it comes to the graphic side of things, I think people took it way too far. But as for game breaking bugs, I kind of get it. Bethesda, I really haven't run into an issue with game breaking bugs on a release day. But I mean, I've run into weird wonky faces or weird glitches.
You mean
occasionally.
aside from Fallout 76?
Yeah, I didn't play Fallout 76 for a reason. I saw enough clips to know.
Enough.
Yeah. Talking specifically Fallout 4, I had no issues in Fallout 4 except for some weird, not graphical issues, weird glitchy issues. Same with Skyrim, same with New Vegas, same with Fallout 3. And I started Starfield today, and I haven't run into them. I don't run into anything that's game breaking yet.
And that's good.
Yes.
And I'm not here to justify the way Mass Effect Andromeda was at launch, because again, I didn't fully play it until after it was resolved. So anytime a developer does that, it's wrong. I just am a little personally annoyed seeing some wonky NPCs and people are like, what's the Bethesda charm? And then people showing a picture of someone from Mass Effect Andromeda and like, this is why this game was unplayable. And I'm like, all right. Fine.
I am going to say we're going to skip our next one and come back to it because we're going to stay in the same vein, because the next one on our list is kind of a separate topic where the next one, the one after that, falls into like the same category. Fallout 76 is next on this list, and that game was a mess. And this is the reason, this was the first Bethesda game I didn't like pre-order or get it hyped for. I saw the announcement for it, I'm like, this is not going to be good. This is going to be a disaster. And this is coming from me, who watched the keynote presentation for Fallout 4 6 times before it came out, waiting 3 months for it to come out.
Oh my gosh, Blake.
And I was so excited for Fallout 4. You have no clue.
Todd Howard has you in a death grip.
Not anymore, because he used to, but this Fallout 4 was just, it was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. And then 76 happened. Starfield. Oh, Starfield. But Fallout 76, and Em already mentioned this, people set up all these mines, and it broke the servers. Things crashed. It was unplayable. There were bugs where people would get stuck and couldn't get unstuck. They couldn't get into places they were supposed to get. Most quests would lock them out. The game functions now, but the game came out in 2016, 17? I don't even remember when.
Oh, it was later than that.
It was 2018. It was 2018 because I had just moved. And yeah, so okay, 2018, that was 5 years ago. It's bad if it's working 5 years later. It should have been working when it came out, you know.
Did it just start working?
No, I think it started working like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Is when it started to become playable. Player base crashed so quickly. Like, they lost so many players within that first couple weeks. Like, it was nonsense.
Yeah. I think anyone who releases a game in that state and loses players can't really complain about it. Like, if your whole base of your game is that it's an online game and using the tools and systems in the game breaks the game, it's not a game. It's not.
This was also, it got to a point GameStop had so many copies that they would give it away with just random purchases because they had so many copies. Because that's back when they did physical disc for it.
How do you think it's worth right now? How much do you think Fallout 76 is worth right now?
Oh, probably.
Take a guess.
$5. Probably less than that.
Okay. I can get it from Walmart for $15.
That's not where we look.
I can get it from CD Keys for $9.
I'm looking. I can get it off eBay for $5.38.
All right.
For both. Oh, sorry. If you get it for PS4, though, it's $5.49.
Ooh, what a steal.
Now, the difference is you were looking at new. Oh, no, this one's. I think this is brand new. I'm considering it.
Nobody wants it. Don't consider it.
I'm a sealed collector, Em. It'd be great just to have it on the shelf.
It's not worth collecting.
It'd be great just to have it on the shelf for when people remember. Oh, remember that disaster? Oh, yeah. I kind of want that now.
Why? No one will be playing it. It's not like an old bad game where you can put it in your N64 and play it and reminisce. You need other players to play the video game.
And
anyone who, however many years from now, that you can look back on that game and feel nostalgic and open it up to play it, who is still in the Fallout 76 world, has problems. This ain't Neopets. Like, it is not. It doesn't have that much staying
It
power.
ain't Toontown.
No Club Penguin or Webkins.
Okay, but now we can go back to the other topic. And this one I was personally affected by. No Man's Sky. Really, that one punched me in the gut. I didn't learn about it until like a few months before it came out. I didn't watch the original E3. I didn't see anything about it. So I got lucky at the beginning because I didn't know anything. So when I first saw the trailer, like the coming soon trailer, I was like, this is going to be dope. This is going to be so cool. And this falls into a different vein because the game worked. The game worked perfectly fine. The graphics looked fine, whatever. There was just nothing. And all the promises they made were not there. It was boring. You walked around, you scanned things, you find the occasional NPC who tell you something, which they're very few and far between. But that was it. Now, the game developer was a mobile game developer. This was a big project for them. And they have since greatly updated the game and people love it. I just refuse to go back. I paid $60 for that game just to be bored to tears for a week and a half. And I just
You
can't
stuck
bring.
it out for a week and a half?
Huh?
You stuck it out for a week and a half?
I kept hoping. I'm like, oh, it's still early game. It's still early game. Oh, it's kind of cool. I can name this planet. Oh, it's kind of cool. I can name this animal. Oh, well, it's kind of meh. No.
Yeah, and like you said, that kind of falls into a different vein of like, there's developers who are releasing games that are unfinished and developers who are releasing games that are finished, but they don't contain the things they were promised. They oversold themselves. They oversold what the game was going to be. And there's a few ways, and we'll get into these, but there's a few ways that kind of gets made up for, I feel like, a lot of times, where instead of waiting and releasing the game it's finished, they release a working game that lacks all the content it should have. And then they either update it, they do long-term, like consistent updates, or they offer the content that should have been there as a DLC.
So the big thing. Oh wow, I just lost my train of thought. That's a normal occurrence, by the way. This is pure content. I'm throwing for content here. No, I completely forgot what I was
Sure.
going to say. I'll let you continue.
I mean, so like No Man's Sky obviously falls into that vein of like it couldn't deliver on what it was promised, and so therefore like they did an update where they then delivered on the things they were promised. But it's kind of become much more normal and almost like a new way of releasing games to be like, okay, well here is the base game, and then we'll just add all the fun stuff to it later. Which can sound great when you're thinking, okay, well, I love this game and I'm going to keep getting updates for it. New content will keep coming out and I'll keep being invested in this game. But then you never know how much the developer has planned and at what point they're going to pull the plug and say, we're done with this. And if it's really going to feel like extra content in the end, or if it's going to feel like they did the bare minimum that should have been released at launch and then pieced out once they got to that point.
So I was going to add two games to this list kind of in that vein, and then I didn't. We talked about it earlier, specifically live updates, and that's for Mario sports games where they're free updates. Like, they're not like you have to pay, but like they are like, oh, hey, it's been 4 months. We're going to add a character. Oh, here's a new court, etc., etc. And then they just stop with no warning. They did it with Mario Golf. I think they did it with Mario Tennis, and they did it with Mario Strikers. I low-key kind of wish they did it with Mario Party Superstars, but I digress. I wish we got updates for that. Regardless, it feels like, hey, we were going to add this for release, and we just decided not to because we want to make the money now. And we'll just give it to you later.
Kind of feels like Nintendo's a big perpetrator of this. And I feel like they do it on all sides, between legitimate DLC, not legitimate DLC, and then updates that should have been there in the base game, and they decided to, kind of wait, and then long updates. Like, I can think of a Nintendo game that belongs in each of those categories. You mentioned, the sports games where they had free updates, but they really should have been included in the base game. And then in terms of long, consistent updates, obviously, I have to mention Animal Crossing New Horizons, which we've talked about before. Because this was something that upset me personally. I was personally victimized by it. I'm still personally victimized by it. Um, New Horizons was a great game on release, and I'm not saying I would have wanted to wait longer for it because it was March 2020 and I wanted it in my hands at that moment. Um,
There was a
but
certain thing happening in that time that kind of made us all want to play it.
were happening. I remember there was even a petition where people were trying to petition Nintendo to release it like 3 weeks early because they were like, the world sucks and we need this now. Obviously, that didn't happen.
No.
And the game was great, but even at launch, the game lacked so many things that old games had. Like, yeah, it had new things. It had terraforming and designing and whatnot. But, the Roost, the cafe, and going to a flea market, events, holidays, just like so many things that the older games had that or like a third location. So like every Animal Crossing you have your base, like your city, your town, your whatever, and then there's somewhere you can go, like a market or an island to fish on or a main street, a city, somewhere you can go. New Horizons didn't have that. You couldn't go anywhere else except for to see a friend. And then they released updates here the next year for holidays, which fine, they've always had that, so it wasn't like it was new. And they released a little farmer's market you could go to, and eventually they released the Roost, except for instead of having it be its own building like it was in previous entries, it was just an addition to the museum that did nothing, pretty much. And then they said, all right, have some extra items and we're out, so that by the time they finished updates, it still lacked things that older games already had. So at this point, you're like, okay, well, this is the finished game, and I'm still missing things that I wanted from it.
So, yeah, it's more like an excuse for them to get our money now. Like, it's in a playable state. You can do things in it, but, we just don't want to finish it right now. We want to make the money now and then give you the stuff later. It's like they're on layaway. We're not on layaway. Yes. They're on layaway.
Yes, exactly. And it's so frustrating because you have to sit around and be like, okay, well, when can I do this thing? Or is that thing even coming? And I think it's kind of a way, like a little bit of a gamble to buy a game that does this because, obviously everyone thought Brewster and the Roost were going to come to Animal Crossing, but it was like the last update, one of the very last updates. So we played the game for over a year before they finally said, okay, you can have this thing finally that has existed in every Animal Crossing game and should have been included with the base game. And then they dipped and left. So, and there was, like I said, there were still so many things that people wanted and never got, or things that were there but weren't as good as the old games. And so it's kind of like, sometimes almost feels like a bait and switch to be like, okay, give us your money now and you'll probably get these things. And at the end, you're like, I never got that. And you've left me now. Like, I remember how baffled everyone was when Nintendo said, this is the last update, guys. Here you go. Bye. We're like, oh, we thought you were going to be doing this for a while, and you're done now. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That's the Nintendo way. That is the Nintendo way.
There was so much more that could have been done. So much more.
We made a list. Not a list. We made like a section kind of dedicated to that idea of unfinished versus DLC. Animal Crossing was Emily's big example there. And it was somewhat justified, but not fully justified, as she already went into explanation for. But one that wasn't justified, straight up.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Because I just want to point out, that wasn't the DLC. That was the long-term updates.
Oh, yeah. The one DLC, which was Brewster wasn't the DLC. He was
Brewster wasn't DLC.
Okay.
Animal Crossing did have DLC that you had to pay for. The updates were free, but the DLC in Animal Crossing that you had to pay for or you got for free if you had the Nintendo Family thing, I think was justified because it was its own thing completely. You had to go to like a different island to get to it. It was its own inclusive game with its own milestones, achievements, and you could play the game and do everything you wanted to do without it. It was the happy home designer. So like it was a completely different game style than, and like you could get things that would benefit your island, but it was its own thing. Like it didn't affect the main game, and you could easily understand it and get everything in the game without doing it.
You just got bonuses that helps you in the main game, like
Yeah,
little furnitures or whatever.
you could be like, oh, I can use sound effects in my house now, like stuff like that.
Little goofy things, right?
It was a justified DLC.
So that was justified. So yeah, we're talking about DLCs. Where an unjustified one, and this was the pure version of corporate greed. Square Enix, Kingdom Hearts 3, where part of the main story, the ending main story, was locked behind a paywall. And then that paywall was just the same data fights from Kingdom Hearts 2 with story at the end.
It wasn't a cheap paywall either.
It was like $30.
It was a $30 paywall. And like that is where I think it becomes criminal. I mean, you can charge for DLCs fine, but I think a DLC should be a completely on its own side thing. You know, if you look at like Breath of the Wild's DLC, you could go through these challenges and get a fun motorcycle that was technically a fifth divine beast. Or there was another thing that you could do that I don't even remember. Ghost of Tsushima has DLC that's basically just like a new quest line. I think of the Assassin's Creed games do that, where it's like, okay, well, we found this extra quest line for you to do, but they don't affect the main story in any way. When your DLC directly impacts the main story, and you won't be able to fully understand what's going on in the next game without playing that DLC, then it becomes a problem.
On the flip side, were other games that do it right, that are a little bit higher scale, and we're going back to Bethesda, because Bethesda was kind of like who popularized this. But first of all, Bethesda got shit on because they were charging $30 for a horse mount in Oblivion. That quickly went away. I think it was $20, $30. I can't remember. It was something stupid. But the way they did it with Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Skyrim is, okay, so you had your main world, you had your main quest there. These DLCs take you to whole new maps, like unattached, and they won't affect the main story of the game, but they give you more lore and background as to why certain things are happening. You don't need to know them to understand what's happening in the main story, but it gives you a little bit more background. And I think those are a little bit more justified. Fallout New Vegas,
that's somewhat justified. I would still argue that the lore should be included in the main story.
the problem is that it's minor lore. It's more like, oh, who's leaving these signs behind? Oh, and then you learn about this guy.
Okay.
It's that kind of thing. Fallout New Vegas is probably the best example of why I believe it's more justified, is because one, every single DLC takes you to a whole new massive map. Like, it's not even like it's like a small area. It's massive with tons to do. And all four DLC were technically connected with one another. But each different map, you learn more and more about the Lone Wanderer. And you've seen glimpses of him in the main game New Vegas, but he's not a main component. But that's when you learn about him until you get to the final DLC. And like, that's the big finale about that specific character that you only have heard rumors of in the main game. And so it's not affected, but DLC like fleshes out a whole new story. And once again, it's like you get 4 additional games, which is why I can justify it more. And they were $20 a piece. Like,
I think that's too bad.
Yeah, no, back in 20, like, this is when DLC was still relatively new, back in like 2008, 2009, 2010. You know, it was still a generally new concept. With the exceptions of games like Guitar Hero, which would, hey, give us $1, you can get a new song. But yeah, The Sims, give us $30 and you could wear a cowboy hat sometimes.
Well, you know who's having that problem right now?
Who?
And I guess this comes down to like, I guess you label it microtransactions. But it's so expensive at this point, it feels like it's DLC. And we'll delve more into this game and its updates later. But Dreamlight Valley has received a lot of criticism for that, actually, ever since they released like the Moonstone shop, where you can get like custom skins for your houses and get extra houses, but like the exchange rate between these fake moonstones in real life dollars. You're paying like $30 for a
Yeah.
house skin. That's an insane system.
Yeah, it's something. It's stupid. That's the power of microtransactions, baby. We're gonna come back to Dreamlight Valley later.
Yeah, I have more things to say about that game.
I do too. And what people are complaining about and how they're absolutely wrong about certain
People
things.
are wrong. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. We'll talk about that later. We're talking about DLCs right now.
Yeah, I think the big issue with it's hard now to distinguish between, is a DLC worthy of being called a DLC, or is it just a way for game companies to justify charging you more money for what should have been in base game?
Yeah, should it have been in, like, we mentioned the Kingdom Hearts one, and that one frustrates me so much. Because, yeah, like, the data battles, like, that's the thing, the data battles, you got them in Kingdom Hearts 2 organically. Like, you didn't have to pay for them. They weren't locked behind something. So, like, doing the exact same thing you did in a game, like, what's the timeline between 2 and 3? 13 years?
Oh, wait. We're slightly incorrect about the data battles. Slightly, because I just remembered. Kingdom Hearts 2 base game does not have data battles.
Is it just 2.5?
Yeah, it's just in... And technically, so this is back in the day, Kingdom Hearts... what they did was they released Kingdom Hearts 1 in Japan, then in English, then they released Kingdom Hearts Final Mix in Japan only.
Yeah, Final Mix.
And then they did the same thing with Kingdom Hearts 2. We eventually got them when they updated them. It gave us the 1.5 and 2.5. Now we have the Final Mix versions. So technically we didn't get them until later, but it wasn't still DLC. It wasn't the same thing.
So that's a thing for me to think about, because like at the time it probably would suck. It would probably be on the same vein as the Persona 5 Royal thing, where like you buy it and then it comes out and it's a new semester and all this extra stuff, but you have to like buy a completely new game for it. Where, by the time, okay, well, I did make the mistake of buying the original Persona 5, but by the time it came out, or by the time I was playing it, I could buy the updated version and not have to buy the old version. So, like, the price point was the same. It wasn't like I bought the original and then had to pay an extra $30 to get that content.
To be fair, the additional content in Persona 5 Royal, and the same with Persona 4 Golden, but Golden gets a little bit more of a break because the newer version came out like 10 years later. It was a whole new thing. But Royal, the one argument with Royal is that it added 30 hours. It's not like it added a small sliver. The data battles in Kingdom Hearts 2 were kind of a small sliver.
Sure.
But what they did in Persona 5 was much longer. Now, I still think it could have been a DLC. Could have been DLC. I feel like I'm saying this meeting could have been an email, but in the form of DLC.
Could have been an email. The only thing about Persona 5 saying that could have been a DLC is that like the Kasumi cutscenes are throughout the entire game. So like there's, I don't know. I mean, I guess it could have been. I see why they made it its own game completely and why they released it. It does kind of suck to be like, okay, I paid $60 for this game, and now I have to pay $60 for the same game with extra stuff. But I think that's its kind of own thing completely, whereas like the Kingdom Hearts thing, like we talked about the data battles, fine, you're doing something you did in a game 13 years ago, which, okay, yeah, we like the data battles, so they're fun, I don't mind that. But then what else does DLC have? It has this critical information on Sora and Kairi, and Sora going to save Kairi, and how Kairi ends up being the one who's saved, but Sora ends up being the one who's missing at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. Spoilers for Kingdom Hearts 3, by the way. It's been 4 years.
Yeah, it's been 4 years. Yeah.
But, it has all of that information that if you didn't know the DLC was there, or you couldn't pay the $30 for the DLC, or you just didn't pay the $30 for the DLC, you're gonna get to Kingdom Hearts 4, or you got to the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, and you were like me, and you're like, how did this happen? And you expect that to be answered in Kingdom Hearts 4, but no, it's secretly answered in the DLC you didn't know existed. It makes me think of, and this is so not in the vein of video games, but it makes me think of, and I'm gonna get an eye roll for this, Grey's Anatomy. I know, just bear with me. I promise it tracks and makes sense.
Guys, believe me, this doctor show is related. Just listen.
It is. Believe me, it's related. So, like, Grey's Anatomy, the showmaker of Grey's Anatomy made a bunch of other TV shows that are all in the same universe as Grey's Anatomy. And it got to the point that you would watch one episode of Grey's Anatomy and you think, okay, I could go to the next episode and any question I had is going to be answered in that next episode. But no, they actually answered that in a different television show. And so now if you want to know what's going on in your own show, you have to watch that one. They like literally killed one of the main characters. Not even in his own show. And so that's how I feel about this Kingdom Hearts 3 thing, where it's like you expect the questions you had in Kingdom Hearts 3 to be answered in Kingdom Hearts 4, and instead they're answered off in this side thing that you have to pay $30 for that you may or may not know exists.
I can make it worse. And this is not even the DLC conversation. This is just Square Enix being Square Enix. This is slightly off topic, but on topic. They released a new game in 2020, and it's a music rhythm game with no story until you beat it. And the last 15 minutes have incredibly crucial information that is relevant to everything going on.
Forgot that existed. Literally forgot it existed because it's so unimportant to my life. And I remember I kept checking with you and our other friend who played it, and I was like, "Is there story yet?" And you guys were like, "Nah, there's nothing here." And then you got to the end, and you're like, "Well, actually, there is story." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm not buying this frickin' rhythm game, and I'm not playing it." And so then you have to either buy it and play it, or you have to go find somebody else who's played it. I should not have to buy side games in order to understand the story of the main series. Like, you should not be releasing critical information to me in small doses.
It's $40 for a 15-minute... It's probably not $40 anymore, but when it came out, it was $40 on release day.
If you look at that $40 and then you look at the $30 the DLC costs, you're paying $70. Not even for the games themselves, but to understand the lore and the story of the main game that you already paid $60 for.
You know what I can get with $40? Well, I used to be able to get 40 hot and spicies, but they don't have those anymore. But
I was gonna reference Taco Bell. That's a lot of Baja Blast.
That is a lot of Baja Blast.
Like, that's just a lot of money. And then, like, you think about, okay, I spent $60 on Kingdom Hearts 3. I'll probably spend $60 on Kingdom Hearts 4. That is if I'm not buying any of the special editions. And then you want $30 for the DLC, $40 for this rhythm game, just so I can understand the story.
80 hours of me torturing myself just for a platinum trophy in that rhythm game.
I can't believe you did that. Well, that's why almost, like, on, like, a different game series, I know we give the Zelda series a lot of crap for its timeline and a lot of like, we released this but it's not canon. It's almost why I appreciate them doing that, because, you know, the Warriors game comes out and then they're like, well, there's story here but it's not canon, and I'm like, I'll go watch it in a cutscene, but you're right, it's not canon. So like, at the end of the day, I'm not gonna get to Tears of the Kingdom and be confused because I didn't play the Warriors game and I don't understand what's going on.
You don't have to play Super Mario Sunshine to understand Super Mario Odyssey. You should, but you don't have to.
There's so much time and so many games in between those two. Why didn't you say Galaxy? Like,
oh no, there's lore in Galaxy you need to understand to play on. I'm just kidding. No, there's not.
I can't believe you from Sunshine to Odyssey. There's so many years and game systems and video games in between them.
There's like
I know you just really jumped so far ahead. I was unsettled.
The only piece of lore you need to know is that Yoshi, his shoes are not shoes. He's born with them. Those are his feet.
I love him.
He ain't got no toes.
You don't have all the facts. I love him.
Have you ever seen him come out of one of those eggs with feet and without shoes on?
No, I don't. I quite honestly, I think seeing Yoshi's toes would be a scary thing. That would be like, it's something you can't even like imagine or think about, because like, you've never thought about Yoshi's toes. But then the moment like Yoshi came out and you saw him with toes, you'd be like, ugh.
Put
like,
those grippers away.
It's almost like, you know, when you like see like the Mario TV show or whatever it was, where like you see Toad take off the Toad hat and it's like, it's a hat, and you're like, ugh, like, put it back. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Or what was it the Yoshi, or there was something else where it was like, oh, it was the Fall Guys thing where it's like, here's the skeleton of a Fall Guy. Or
Oh
was that
yeah.
Was it the Among Us
Oh no, it was
or
the
was
Fall
it the
Guys. The
Fall?
Fall Guys, and they were massive, and they like had a weird hunchback. Like it was a whole thing. I forgot they did that. And they
Where
did
it's
that
like,
because it was
please stop
funny.
this. Like, please stop. Like, don't do this to me. Like, I don't need it. That's how I feel about Yoshi's Toes.
Okay, we got one more topic and not much silence, so we're gonna jump to the last topic.
We kind of touched on it a little.
Yeah, we slightly touched on it. It's mainly unfinished game versus long term updates. We talked about the long term updates, I think, extensively. We talked about it with Animal Crossing. We talked about it with the Mario sports games.
Well, no, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. We can still talk about the Dreamlight Valley effect because I think that's important.
Well, that's what I was going to mention was I think there's again like the DLC there's justified and there's not justified. I think the same thing happens with long-term updates. Whereas I don't feel the Animal Crossing long-term updates getting what we got out of them, I don't think they were justified. Especially because so many of those updates were like, here's a Thanksgiving update, we have a Thanksgiving event now. Here's a Christmas update, we have a Christmas event now. And those always existed, right? So if they had just released all of that content at base, you would have gotten a Thanksgiving and still had the Thanksgiving event. You would have gotten a Christmas and still had the Christmas event. You would have gotten a New Year's. Like, those always existed. So, like, a lot of these updates were disguised as updates, but in fact that they were just events that would have happened regardless.
The Easter Bunny in that game saves me
Easter Bunny's
nightmares.
here. But again, the Easter Bunny always existed in this series. New Year's Eve always existed in the series. Halloween always, like, nothing they brought was new. And it wasn't an update. It was something that was already in the game. They were just telling me, hey, it's Halloween. And I was like, gee, thanks. Thanks for telling me.
Here's a pumpkin.
Yeah. And so, like, they felt fake. And then again, by the time you got to the end, basically you had been given everything you should have had at the base game. You had a third location you could go to. You had Brewster's Cafe. Like, but again, there were still so many things that people wanted, you know, an easier decorating system, an easier terraforming system, bird's eye view system like Dreamlight Valley has. And then
Better
so again,
lining up of paths.
please let me lay my paths better. I still burn so much. But that's what I feel is an unjustified long-term update that almost leaves you feeling kind of hoodwinked and unsatisfied. And then I think there is a good form of long-term updates, despite how entitled and rude people have gotten about them, which would be Dreamlight Valley, where, you know, obviously it's still an early access, early release. Mm-hmm. But the game that was released initially, it had bugs, it had problems, which is to be expected. It doesn't fall into the same category as the first ones because it's still early access, and that was made very clear.
Yeah, they told us this is not finished, but you can play it now. Yeah. There was an asterisk.
Exactly. But like, even like, again, I went into it and yes, I had bugs and problems. There were quests I couldn't finish. But I feel like they were resolved pretty quickly and I still had a great time doing everything else. And I think what they had at release, I put enough time into it that I felt justified paying $30 for that game. And I think I only paid that much because I got extras out of it. I don't remember how much.
Remember we got the tier up. We paid $50 for the extra.
Oh, right, because we got the tier 2.
Yeah.
So, like, the base game's $30. I feel like what they had initially, it was, you know, even when it was what they had with it, was a good game on its own. And since then, every month to every other month, they have been consistent releasing new characters, new quest lines, new world. The overall story and plot of the game has been continually updated and now is at its conclusion. They're teasing new biomes, new tools, new, you know, like in little things. Like,
wait, is the game at its conclusion?
The main story is at its conclusion.
I am so far behind. I need to go do that. All right, great.
Well, you know, I say the main story is at its conclusion, but the end of the main story had a cliffhanger that I'm a little confused about. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But
there's
the
Kingdom
forgetting...
Hearts. There's very important Kingdom Hearts knowledge in that game, by the way. I'm just kidding. I'm done.
The forgetting plot line is done. It's all wrapped up.
Oh, so it's gonna be like sagas, like anime.
Maybe they haven't confirmed that. But like every month to every 2 months, they are releasing large updates with new characters, new worlds, new stories, new quests, new furniture items, new clothing items, new quality of life updates.
That's the important thing to note, and this is where people are wrong, is that what you said before, it's early access, meaning the game isn't done. They told us the game isn't done and that these updates are for to finish the game. We just get them early. Whenever the game is done, it's technically going to be free. It's going to be a free-to-play title. People who bought it knew going in, this is not finished, but it's playable. And if you want to do with what we have now, you can. And as we get new stuff out, you can interact with it, which is the proper way to do it. Granted, I'm shocked Disney does this because Disney is generally very greedy. But the way they are handling it is whatever team they hired. Let me rephrase. Whatever team they hired is handling it very well. They're very active to answering community questions about things happening.
They are. They're very active on Twitter.
They have a Trello board. That's
they
how you
do.
know they're
they have
official.
A Trello board.
Like this is
wait. I know this team. I know the team, and I want to give them a shout out because I think they've been doing an amazing job. And sometimes I want to fight people for them, like in a way that's not normal. Oh God, it doesn't even have the team on here. But anyway, I just want to give a shout out to the Dreamlight Valley team because I think they've gotten to a point where their fan base has become so used to these constant updates that they've become exhausting and entitled, almost like it's the opposite point where we talked about, devs that are releasing games too soon. And now we're fans who are complaining. Like, I literally today saw somebody on the Dreamlight Valley Twitter complaining that it had been 6 weeks since the last update. They're like, it's been 6 weeks since the last update. This is ridiculous. People are getting bored and leaving the game. And I'm like, you've been getting updates, new characters, new quests, new storylines every 2 months for over a year now. And you were upset it's been 6 weeks?
We've gotten like 7 or we bought these games in October of last year, I think, right? September or October. It was around this time.
September, because they released Scar in October.
Yeah, we've had like 8 updates in a year. That's a lot. That is a lot.
There's still way more. It's not like they said we're done with updates. There's an update coming within the next week or so. And then there's already updates that have been made through the rest of this year, updates going into the next year. But if you if you ever want to see the most entitled fans, go to the Dreamlight Valley Twitter and go in their comments because people are constantly complaining, why don't we have this character yet? Why can't I do this yet? And it's the audacity to say people are leaving and getting uninterested in the game because of the lack of updates. Okay, that's how video games work. Like, if you go to the store and you buy Ghost of Tsushima, you're going to get 60 to maybe 80 hours of that game. Best case scenario, right? And then you move on and you play a different game. I have 400-something hours in Dreamlight Valley right now, and there's more content coming. If you are so obsessed with the game, you are devouring all of its content, and you're bored now, okay, move on to another game. They can't provide you endless content forever.
This is gonna be another 1,000-hour game for you, isn't it?
Probably. I mean, like, honestly, I've been deep in the Animal Crossing hole, but the moment Belle gets released, the moment Belle and the Beast are in Dreamlight Valley, it's over. It's over for Animal Crossing. I'm gone.
Give me Cusco. Give me Cusco is all I ask for.
You are dreaming, buddy. That's another thing I see people going on, like, the Twitter and being like...
On the Twitter.
I'm like, they're going... Well, on the Dreamlight Valley Twitter.
It's
and
called
being
X
like,
now. I'm sorry, I'm done.
No, you still have to go to twitter.com. You can't go to x.com. But, like, you even see people who are being like, oh, can I have the Aristocats? Can I have, I'm trying to think of, like, the most obscure Disney character.
Okay, Cusco is not obscure. People know The Emperor's New Groove.
Right, but they still don't have freaking Cinderella in that game yet. Like, they don't have Peter Pan, and they have Skull Island. They don't have Rapunzel, and they have what's her name? Mother Gothel, yeah. And they still don't have Rapunzel and Flynn. They have Stitch, and they still don't have Lilo. Like, the idea that they're gonna throw in the Aristocats right now, like, guys, please, just work with me a little. Like, have some realistic expectations about what this game can offer you.
Give me Milo from Atlantis, please.
asking for that dude. I've seen people ask for him. Like, literally the most obscure, like, deep track Disney Pixar characters you can find. People are asking for them, and
Actually,
it's so funny.
I lied. The only character I want is Corey from Corey in the House.
Oh my, Kyle Massey, where are you?
You don't want to know where he is right now.
Doesn't he have some problems?
He went to prison a few times, I think.
Oh, okay. Well,
one more thing I want to talk about before we go to the after party that's still somewhat related for long-term updates. There was one more exception where it worked out fine, though I'm a little salty on another end, but I know why. The still most selling Switch game of all time. Can you guess what that is? The best selling Switch game of all time?
the best-selling Switch game. Are we talking about Mario Kart?
Yep, Mario Kart 8.
I was thinking about that one.
So the reason I justify it is one, the new courses and the new characters, they're only $20.
Yeah.
It's really not that bad. And there's a lot of courses. Like it's like a whole new game of course. It's literally that many. The only reason I'm slightly salty is because Mario Kart 8 is a Wii U game from 2013 or 14. It is essentially 10 years old now. We need a new Mario Kart. But I digress. They didn't charge us Mario Kart prices. Plus, we got the DLC for free because we have Nintendo Switch Online.
Well, here's my thought on that. What would be in this scenario, what would be the benefit of a new Mario Kart game? Right? Because like
they're gonna
we already have new courses. We're already getting new content for it. So like I mean, like I love Mario Kart, but aside from Double Dash, it's never really been innovative since the beginning. It's the same kind of concept. The only thing that keeps changing are the carts, characters, and courses. The three
items.
C's.
The items.
Changed that much. Like there's a few here and there, but like nothing a good update couldn't fix. Like I feel like if you're getting constant new courses, that's pretty much all you need from a Mario Kart game.
But with a new Switch coming out, if they release Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Deluxe, I think people will be a little salty. I guess my whole thing, it's not a live, I don't know what they call it. A game that's constantly changing, like Fortnite, a live service. That's it, a live service.
Yeah.
Game. It's not a live service game. It's a game that came out a long time ago on a failed system, which is why they re-released it in the first place. When Switch 2 comes out, they are going to need a new Mario Kart. And the new courses, to be fair, 90% of the new courses we are getting are remade old courses. I have no problem with that. I love them. They're great. And we are getting some new courses in there, but they're not new. So, whenever we do get to Mario Kart 9, hopefully soon, I'm expecting like huge things. I think it's gonna be crazy. Switch 2 next year. Calling it.
I have thoughts on the Switch too, but maybe we should save that for the after party.
Well, actually, we should save that for another episode. What we want on the Switch 2. The episodes write themselves, Em.
I don't have anything to say on it other than like, why?
Why on a Switch 2?
Like, what are you gonna offer me, Switch 2?
Okay, that being said, thanks everybody for tuning into the main part of the podcast. You can find us both individually on Twitch. I stream 3 times a week. I'm twitch.tv/TheBeardedBlake She streams once last week. Twitch.
New game I'm gonna play, and I'll probably play Mario Odyssey on stream at some point. There's Mario 64 on stream because I have to do that now.
And Sunshine.
I have plans.
You can find her at twitch.tv/EmilyJean33. We are about to jump to the after party. We don't necessarily have a idea for the next from 2 weeks from now yet, but we will post updates once we know. So if you're on the YouTubes, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that nonsense. And if you want to be part of the after party, come find us on Twitch.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Bye, everyone.